More than a year after this hearing, the debate over FEMA funding, immigration enforcement, and the limits of executive authority is still shaping Congress. But when then Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem appeared before the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Patty Murray accused the department of freezing billions of dollars approved by Congress, weakening disaster preparedness, and putting politics ahead of public safety. The exchange quickly became one of the hearing's most contentious moments.
In the last 3 months, you have frozen or canceled over $100 billion in funding that was approved by Congress, bipartisan. We are talking about everything from disaster relief to grants that keep people safe. But when my staff has requested information on the status of this unacceptable holdup, the department failed to provide any acceptable justification. This illegal freeze, and it is illegal, is taking a real toll on communities who are waiting on the investments that Congress has delivered. So will you commit to immediately unpausing these funds?
Well, Senator, thank you for covering a lot of topics there. Let me touch on a few of those right away.
Well,
what the Trump administration is doing is enforcing the law for the first time. Under the Biden administration,
I'm asking you about the funds.
Illegal aliens were prioritized over American citizens. Now the scales of justice have been leveled, and
Madam
no one
Chair,
is treated better than anyone else.
I asked you a
Citizens are
question.
treated the same,
Madam
and these
Secretary,
illegal aliens and criminals
answer.
are being
I heard
deported.
it previously. I'm asking you a specific
The grants
question.
that you are referencing,
Correct.
the grants that you are referencing have been paused and reevaluated to make sure that they are truly being spent in the way to which they were appropriated.
Well,
many of these grants were being diverted into things they were never intended
These funds were passed on a bipartisan basis by members.
Absolutely, and the Biden
Congress.
administration perverted them in how they used them, diverted them to facilitate illegal immigration, to house people in places like the Roosevelt Hotel, who held illegal criminals
We're
that took the life
Madam
of
Chair,
Lincoln
about
Riley.
$100
I think all of us
billion.
have recognized
It is not
that
credible
the
to
victims
me
here
that
are
all
the
the
people who have
recipients
died
of
and
that.
lost their children because
Madam
of this
Secretary,
situation.
it is not credible, Madam Chair. It is not credible that $100 billion is used to break the law. That just cannot be true. And let me change this a little bit. On the other hand, I am very concerned that DHS is now dramatically overspending funding that Congress has not provided. If you were a CEO doing that, I don't think you'd be in your job long. We need accountability and we need answers, and that includes informative responses to oversight questions sent to the department over the last 3 months. I am ranking member on this committee. I have worked with every member of this committee. We take our responsibility serious to fund your department and others. We need to have answers, we need to have accountability, and we need to make sure you're not overspending money that you were not allocated.
Well, thank you for that question. I will be very
really
clear
a
in the
question, it's a
fact.
statement.
Do you want me to respond?
Well, you can.
Well, I've worked many jobs in my life, but I also have been a CEO. I've run
I'm not
businesses. I've been a
questioning your
governor.
credentials. I'm
and it is
questioning your spending.
We are prioritizing where our security needs are in this country, and we are hoping that this body will agree that reconciliation is necessary to address the things that have been neglected in this country for too long, that we have the technology upgrades, the manpower upgrades that are necessary. So the $170 billion request for the Department of Homeland Security is
Chair,
incredibly
my time is
important
running
to make
out,
sure we
and
have the
I do have a
tools that
couple
we
of
need.
additional questions. The fact is that you've not been given this funding. Saying that it's going to come in reconciliation that has not passed is not an acceptable answer. I did want to ask about FEMA and disaster relief. This is really important. A lot of disaster relief has been politicized. You've endorsed eliminating FEMA outright. We have seen an upheaval at FEMA that is going to put lives in jeopardy. 1 in 5 FEMA employees have been pushed out, taking this administration's so-called buyout offer. We are losing indispensable staff just weeks away from fire and hurricane season, and over $100 billion in disaster relief and FEMA grants are still being held up. DHS is making it a lot harder to qualify for relief, something people in my home state of Washington are experiencing firsthand. Multiple requests from governors have been rejected in recent weeks, including a request from our state. And we haven't been given any response about this, and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, has President Trump directed you to prioritize funding for Republican states?
Absolutely not.
Have you directed your staff to prioritize funding to Republican-led states over Democratic
Absolutely
states?
not.
Have your
Under
staff
this administration, there will not be any politicization of support, relief, FEMA assistance, or grants given based on politics.
Well,
Every single person
there
will be
is a
treated the same.
clear
It will be very
trend,
different than the Biden
Madam
administration.
Secretary, there's a clear trend of Republican-led states getting very fast responses and funding. Democrat-led states are being forced to wait. We have never treated FEMA as a partisan issue in this country. Thank you.
In the months that followed, the Trump administration continued pursuing major changes to FEMA and Homeland Security funding. In March 2025, then Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem publicly announced the administration's goal of eliminating FEMA and replacing it with a new approach to disaster response, a proposal that immediately drew bipartisan concern in Congress. As oversight continued into 2026, lawmakers from both parties repeatedly questioned DHS over delayed FEMA funding, disaster grant approvals, and the department's handling of emergency relief. More recently, in July 2026, more than 24 states filed a lawsuit challenging new DHS and FEMA funding conditions, arguing that the administration was unlawfully attaching immigration and election-related requirements to congressionally approved disaster assistance. Those later developments make Senator Patty Murray's questioning especially significant. During this May 2025 Senate Appropriations hearing, Murray argued that the Department of Homeland Security had frozen or delayed billions of dollars that Congress had already approved for disaster relief, Homeland Security grants, and emergency preparedness. She warned that communities preparing for wildfire and hurricane season could face unnecessary risks if those funds remained unavailable. Murray also criticized the administration's immigration policies, accusing the department of prioritizing highly publicized enforcement actions while, in her view, diverting attention and resources away from other core Homeland Security responsibilities. She further questioned whether FEMA disaster declarations and grant approvals were being handled consistently across the country, asking whether Democratic-led states were receiving slower responses than Republican-led states. Then Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem rejected those accusations. She argued that DHS had paused certain grants only to verify they were being used in accordance with congressional intent and maintained that some programs had been redirected under the previous administration in ways the department believed were inconsistent with their original purpose. Noem also denied that politics played any role in FEMA funding decisions, stating that disaster assistance would not depend on a state's political leadership. That disagreement became the central issue throughout the exchange. Murray viewed the funding pauses as an unlawful delay of money already appropriated by Congress and questioned whether DHS was spending money that had not yet been authorized while withholding money that lawmakers had already approved. Noem, by contrast, defended the department's review process as a necessary effort to restore accountability and argued that DHS was prioritizing border security, technology upgrades, and other national security needs while awaiting additional appropriations from Congress. It is important to distinguish between the verified facts discussed during this hearing and the competing policy arguments. It is a matter of public record that DHS reviewed and temporarily paused certain FEMA and Homeland Security grants, and that Congress continued investigating those decisions through multiple oversight hearings. The larger dispute centered on whether those actions represented lawful oversight of federal spending or an improper delay of congressionally appropriated funds. Looking back from today, many of the concerns raised by Senator Murray continued well beyond this hearing. Questions over FEMA's future, disaster grant delays, executive authority, and the conditions attached to federal funding remained active subjects of congressional oversight and federal litigation throughout 2025 and 2026. That is why this exchange remains relevant. It captured the beginning of a debate that continues to shape how disaster relief, Homeland Security funding, and congressional oversight are carried out in the United States.